Welcome to episode 4 of the Uncharted 80s podcast. I'm here with my good buddy Noel. Welcome, Noel.
Hi.
And today we have a real treat for you. Following on from our first episode where we featured Screen 3 and the Faith Brothers, we've now managed to secure Lee Hirons from the Faith Brothers. We're going to talk to him all about the Faith Brothers and their journey in music. And as you know, we're trying to build a spotlight onto bands that perhaps didn't get some of that recognition or some of the notice back in the 80s.
History handed down like big brother's clothes. Madmen and giants cast off, stretched and frayed or tailor-made. The news of the old world hangs on slender shoulders now. Every lesson been denied, every question pushed aside, every dream unrealized can begin anew when I meet with you at eventide. And only changes through the rest, guesses and lies. You know what you can do. You know what you can do. You know what you can do.
So Lee, welcome to the podcast. It's so terrific to see you.
That's my pleasure. Great to see you.
I'll just too quickly before we get into the questions, just to say, as fans, we were obviously pretty shocked by the passing of Billy, and just to send our condolences to you, being very close to him on that as well.
Yeah.
So that sort of leads me nicely into the first question, which is, when did you first meet Billy? Did you sort of grow up together, or?
Yeah, we did. We grew up the song Fulham Court. That's based on that's the place where we lived. I moved in there. It was basically a big sprawling council estate, 400 families in there. Originally built in the 1930s, refurbished in the 60s, and I believe it was the first council estate to have like bathrooms with proper baths and things like that, inside toilets. I moved in there when I was about 4, so we're going, that's the early 60s, 62, and Bill came in a couple of years after, and we were firm friends by the time, I guess, we were about 11. We'd obviously played around together, football and stuff a little bit before that, and I guess I was 13 when Bill suggested we formed a band. He'd done a bit of acting in the past, Bill, and done a bit of stage here and there, went to acting school, bought himself a little cheap Gibson Les Paul copy. I think it was a Jedson, if I'm rightly. I didn't have a guitar. He said, let's start a band. And it really started there, and we were firm friends from that day, yeah.
You must have had some, some musical influences of that time must have been, incredible. What were they? It
was the best time to be alive. The change in music you had from the mid 60s to the mid to late 70s was everything. Before that it wasn't much, but everything came along, didn't it? With obviously all the beautiful pop from the 60s was brilliant. Then you had the psychedelic stuff, then all the rock came in, heavy rock, disco, soul arrived, and then punk, all this stuff, and it was all merging together. So we were part of all that. Yeah, so your record collection was fantastic. And the Top of the Pops, one week it'd be Motorhead #1, the next week it'd be the Nolan Sisters. Much of that, Japan is probably still like that now. It was famous for being like that. You could have, and everyone could watch Top of the Pops. It was the only program on the TV really in that time, in the early 70s.
You can't underestimate that Top of the Pops, how big it was. I think people these days just don't know, do they?
I know, if you one appearance on Top of the Pops on a Thursday, I think it was Thursday, Friday night, you'd sell 100,000 records that weekend, done, easily. So and it was the only program, apart from the Whistle Test, which was late night, more adult. That we got, you get into that as teenagers as well, but it was really made it more what they called musos, I guess. But we never considered ourselves as musos. We didn't like records with big long guitar solos and things like that, But we did like everything. And the great thing about living on that estate, you had different kinds of music blasting out of every house. There was at the entrance to Fulham Court is a big archway, which you may have seen on the cover of the Lunar Kippers record that we made back in before the Faith Brothers. We had a picture of ourselves walking in through the arch of Fulham Court, and just by that arch was a guy that repaired TVs and stuff. And he had this little side booth there where he sold records from, and it was all the reggae records, and we used to get everything out of there. And at the time you think this is our stuff, and then when you look back through history now, all those Trojan records, and loads of them were #1 records, but they didn't feel like that then. It felt like it was yours,
Fantastic.
How did you choose to, in terms of your musical? How did you choose like your instrument? Which one you chose? You played bass, but how was that?
Originally we were both. Well, Bill was a big Beatle fan, and said he really introduced me. So I remember them because obviously I was a kid and the Beatles were there, but I never really appreciated how brilliant they were. And so we got right into the Beatles. So of course he was then John Lennon, and I was Paul McCartney. That was it. Paul McCartney played bass, and at the time when we said, right, we're going to form a band, every kid in the flats decided, well, I'll be in that then, you know. And there were certain kids we didn't want in there. But at one time we had 11 members, you know. None of them had any instruments, but they all wanted to be in the band. And we whittled it down. And in the end, it was listening to the bass, like Paul McCartney playing bass. For me, he's still the greatest bass player ever. If you listen to any Beatles song, just listen to the bass playing. It's all brilliant. And he was very influenced by all the Motown stuff. And I always loved Motown as well. And you can hear the bass lines from Motown and McCartney. They are very similar. But so I like that melodic style rather than just playing as fast as you can. I think it's where you don't play is the important bit. But so that's really where that came from. I just love the sound of the bass. And it seemed to me that for others, it looked a bit easier to play as well. I thought so that might let some of the people in I didn't really want in the band. You know what I mean? They weren't the kind of person you'd want in a band, trust me. You know, so that was part of that reason as well. And as far as then, I know the story of getting his brother to play drums. Jimmy was Billy's elder brother, who sadly died at 29. But he was sitting in the front room watching TV, and we said, we need to get a drummer. So we went in and said, Jimmy, do you want to play drums? And he said, yeah, hang on, I'll just finish this TV program and I'll be in. And then we bought £60 we paid for a drum kit we found in a shop in King Street, Hammersmith, which was basically a small bass drum and snare and a hat. That was it. And he'd never played it before. And we didn't know what we were doing, but he's just hitting them. And he said, oh, you play and I'll come in after 10 seconds. That sort of vibe, and no counting in bars. And then we just forged our way through like that. And he played on our first record. You know, he became quite a good drummer.
So was the legendary Luton Kippers the first band you had together, or do you have other bands before that?
The first band we had was a band called Scruff, which, funny enough, we made a record. We were signed to Track Records, which is part of the Polydor. And Track was run by the Who's manager, Chris Stamp. They had the Who, Jimi Hendrix. They were all Johnny Thunders and Heartbreakers were on there at the same time. So Shakin' Stevens was on there before he ever had a hit. And he was brilliant, by the way. And you could go and see him in the early 70s. And it was like watching a young Elvis, but Elvis could really do it. You know, he was really good. He had quite a reputation. And I saw him at the Nashville at the time all the punks were playing in there. Shakin' Stevens did a great set in there. And in fact, Shakin' Stevens gave us a PA system. He got himself a nice new PA and he gave us his old one, which was fabulous, that was. And I had that set up in my bedroom. I used to play records for it when we weren't doing gigs. And you could hear that around the whole estate. But anyway, yeah, the first band was Scruff. So that was me, Bill, and his brother Jimmy. Funny enough, that record was reissued this year. Cherry Red got in touch with me. They've released a 3-pack CD, 60 artists, 60 tracks on there, sorry. You got Sweet and Slade all in on there. It's called Whatever Happened to the Bother Boys or something like that. And they asked me, because I own the rights to that record now, because track records don't exist anymore. And they've licensed it and it's on that album. And it's been pretty well received. And when we made that record, I guess I was 17, 18 probably. Bill would have been 19. And Vince was a guy the other guitarist, and he played the guitar, so we got him in the band. The four of us were the final members of that first band, Scruff, and we did quite a lot of gigs, yeah, and got a record deal and made a record. Yes, we did some TV. There's a famous TV. Clip of us, Get It Together was the program. It used to be on a 4:00 midweek, presented by Roy North. There's a lot of those programs in the early 70s.
Did you move on? Did Scruff then automatically morph into the Luton Kippers, or was that?
No, but what happened that Scruff went on, and then after the record and all that kind of stuff, we started just sort of moving in different directions. So me and Bill, we always played together, but we often did other things as well, and often came back together, picking up new musicians along the way. And so after Scruff, I formed a band with Gus, who was our drummer, Steve Howlett, known as Gus. He was playing in a band called Straight Up, which was him. My brother Mark was in that band, who ended up in the Faith Brothers, and and a guy called Tommy Mason, who did a lot of gigs with us later on. They had a band called Straight Up, and they were doing some gigs about, and they broke up. So me, Tom, and Gus formed a band called The Shout. Funny enough, that Tony Fletcher, who became the Faith Brothers manager, and he saw when I think it was the third ever or second edition of the Jamming magazine, when it was still a fanzine. We were on the front cover of that. The Shout had a gig somewhere in Shepherd's Bush where we used to play. It was called Nelson's Bar, and all the bands used to play there in the late 70s, early 80s. And we had a gig one night, and Tom's dad became ill and he couldn't do the gig. So Bill and my brother Mark came along. We just jammed for the night, playing some of our songs, some of his songs. We stood in that night because Tom's dad was ill, Tommy couldn't play, and we called ourselves the Luton Kippers, because to earn some money, we all used to work for a removal company called Universal, based in Earls Court. And as you know, a van has a Luton, which is the bit above the cab on the van. And we used to kip up there because we used to start at 6 in the morning, so we'd have a kip on there on the way to the job and probably on the way back. And that's how we called ourselves the Luton Kippers. We then formed the Luton Kippers and called them the legendary Luton Kippers. And we did one gig, the return of a legendary, that sort of thing. And that really took off. And that was a really good band. And we used to pack out the Greyhound. You get 400, 500 in there, and it was rammed, you know. And we had a lot of rock companies come to check us out. We weren't quite sure what to make of us. So we didn't get to make any official releases, but we did our own. And someone sent me a picture a little while ago now, Carlos, a friend of mine. They saw one in a record shop for £200 of a Luton Kippers singles. Have you got any under the bed?
Yeah, there's one.
There you go. 200 quid. I can even pay that for it.
That's amazing. And what was good about that was it had some, I kind of regard it as being kind of pre-Faith Brothers. Like it had an early version of Sunday, and also had Fulham Court on it. And so, you know, they were like...
Yeah, we had quite a few songs. We had a lot of songs. It was a good band.
Where the silence is endless, no room to the words with myself started. My conscience unguarded with cleansed mind. Child, I wonder I saw you in your senseless glory for meaningless shit. I went for you all and myself for a part of it. But I was still with love again for you. It's a thing I used to laugh and wonder. It's your Sunday, bloody Sunday.
Like most bands, when we formed the Faith Brothers, the Kippers sort of just kind of burnt out, really. It was, again, we wanted to go different ways, and Bill and I decided we want to do something different. So then we just went on our own. And but obviously making the first Faith Brothers album, we had a lot of songs already from that we could reuse. So like most bands, making your first album is quite easy if you've got so much material to choose from. And they always go on about the difficult second album. But yeah, the Kippers was a good band, put some good songs.
So how what happened with that? How did the Faith Brothers come about from that?
Yeah, basically, Ben and I wanted to do, like I say, do something a bit different. So basically, I started working with the Big Sound Authority. You remember them? They were a good
Very
band.
much, yeah.
Yeah, with Tony, the singer Tony, the bass player Martin, we went to school together. But Tony, he did Shepherd's Bush, and they had another band called The Directions before that. And they used to play Greyhound as well, and they were brilliant. We loved them. We often played on the same night, or would go and see each other. And anyway, Tony and I started writing together for a little while in between the Luton Kippers and the Faith Brothers and the Big Sound Authority. We were sort of doing some stuff together with their drummer and he and I, and it was good. But then we weren't quite gelling. And then Bill approached me about doing some more stuff. So we spoke about that. And I always liked working with Bill because he's one of the best lyricists ever, without doubt. And my strength was always in coming up with arrangements and chord progressions and melodies and things like that. And Bill and I said, right, this is what we're going to do. So we thought, how we do it? We thought, what we'll do, we'll make a record of our own, which we did, which was the Tradesman's Entrance. Bill sold his guitar to get his money to pay his part of the recording. I was working for London Transport at the time, so I could afford mine. And he managed to get, obviously, we got more guitars later on, but at the time, money was a bit tight. But we recorded the Tradesman's Entrance, the one song. We got Henry in, who we'd met through another mutual friend, so he was in the Kippers as well. Henry, the latest stages of the Kippers. Henry was in. Yeah, and he's like, well, again, I've never worked with a pianist as good as him. I've worked with a lot of keyboard players. Henry is as good as anyone I've ever heard of play. He's just one of those, he's just got it. So we got him in to play the piano on that song, and another friend of ours to play drums on it.
We took our cards in silence. The youngsters were the first to go. Some took a cut in wages, temporary amnesty. Our world economic climate leaves the blame with me. Say it's true, say it's true. It would not be so hard to say what we stand accused. The price of work is quiet, ration is the million.
B-side, we recorded on a little Ford studio, which is a little 4-track cassette recorder. We just did that on that. And then we put the record out, but only to journalists. But there was a journalist strike by the time the record landed on their desk. So it didn't get any reviews, but then picked up one review in the Jamming magazine I mentioned earlier. A friend of ours, saw it one day somewhere, and we didn't see it for months, didn't know it was in there. And the reviewer was going on about this cruelly ignored single was been out for 3 months and all that. So, and when I saw it was Tony, so we rang him up, and he said, I knew the name Hirons for somewhere, but he couldn't place it back with the shout, which was only a few years ago. He said his friend at A&M Records wanted to release it. So we thought, that's interesting. So we went, and A&M Records were in Fulham, funny enough. So we had to see them, and they loving it, and they'd like to put it out around December time. And we're thinking, okay. From there, it was weird. The phone started ringing for all other companies because they're all hearing about A&M want to sign this band. Who are this band? And we didn't have a band. It was just us. We didn't have a manager. Didn't have anyone. We was getting everyone come to ringing us up, giving us money to go and make some demos of how many songs you've got. And I can remember we went to see big publisher Dick Leahy, who Paul Welle, George Michael, is massive, been in the industry for years. Used to run Bell International back in the 70s and things like that. We played it to him, and he's like, God, I've just heard 11 hits. How much do you want? Sort of vibe. It was like a bit like that, So it just went mad. And then every record company wanted to sign us in the end. I don't think it's that uncommon. We signed the deal at 11 o'clock on a Friday night because they were scared to let it go over the weekend, apparently. There was faxing back and forth, getting changes in the contract. And we signed to Siren, which was part of the Virgin thing. So, but the lawyer we had was actually Virgin's lawyer, so they had to get a different lawyer because we had him. That was John Kennedy, a great guy, still in touch with him. He was the trustee for Live Aid and that stuff. He funded all that stuff. So we had some big influences coming in the early days. Everyone was interested. Everyone's going, yeah, this is it. So it was a good time, and we still never had a band.
How did you get the Faith Brothers name then?
Well, the Faith Brothers, the early days, down North End Road, which is a big marketplace where we lived. There was a shop down there that was called Faith Brothers. We used to get all our clothes from and stuff like that when we were younger. But the name just seemed right. It just felt because of how we felt about the world and about doing the right thing for everyone and all that kind of stuff. It just felt like the right name. And as soon as it was mentioned, it was like, yes, that's perfect. Because
I remember I used to work in London. I used to go down on the Underground, and I remember seeing Faith Brothers stickers everywhere.
Yes,
those classic sort of with the sort of logo on it. I think, was it Carl? Did you guys all get involved in sticking those all over London?
We did with Scruff. We used to do that. And at first we used to go along all the train thing up the escalators and put a sticker in between every single advert on every escalator. But with the Faith Brothers, the first campaign we did, which was we had those T-shirts, had Faith Brothers. And of course, it wasn't long after the miners' strike, and people were thinking it was something to do with miners. But we had those posters, 5-foot posters across the country. The record company paid for that. But then before we didn't put a record out or even announce the band, just they'd have Faith Brothers everywhere, and then put new posters up when the record came out.
That's incredible. So how did you get the other guys that, in the band, Will and
basically when it was all kicking off, we realised we've got to get a band. We started auditioning drummers firstly. Basically, we realised we were just trying to find someone that played like Gus, who was in the Kippers. So we just said to Gus, will you come and join the band? He said, yes, of course. So he was back in. And then Henry, obviously, as a keyboard player, came in, and we decided we wanted some brass. So we got Will Tipper and Mark Alderman, and they went to Guildhall Music. So we found them out of there. They were only about 17, 18, I think, something like that. So maybe 19. By that time, I was 25, 26. So they were very young. They came down again. They auditioned straight away. They were in. We didn't labour over. The only thing we laboured over was trying to find the right drummer, and realised we were looking for a Gus. And so we just asked Gus to come back, and he said, yeah. And thank God he did. Great player.
How quickly did it get to a point where you had enough songs for like Eventide? And what was that process to get to that?
Yeah, well, we had, obviously, as mentioned earlier, we had quite a few songs from the Devastate that could be reworked. And then we were writing together both quite fluently. There's lots of we were making like things like Stranger on Home Ground, Eventide. We would basically more time with the lyrics, but they would be knocked up with arrangements and things and recorded. We had our own little studio we built on that council estate, which is a story on its own. And they would be done in a day to put the actual thing together, get it going, and then obviously the lyrics would take a lot longer now because Bill would work on a bit. Once he had the idea, he would hone it until it was perfect, basically. And I thought all his lyrics were perfect. So yeah, we wrote a lot. Yeah, and then quite a lot of songs didn't get recorded.
So he did the lyrics, and did you look after the music side of it then in terms of?
Yeah, on those ones. Yeah, some people could write music as well, the songs, melodies and things too. He'd come up with a lot of those on his own. But but again, for me, for arrangement, I was always more involved in the arrangements and things like that. That's the part I enjoyed most, and come up with basic ideas. But no, the songs that are credited Frank's Hirons, that would be me music mainly and him lyrics. And then obviously there are some that just Bill and one or two that are just mine. But all the bands would come in like people like Henry, because they generate, it gives a nice chord progression, like Strange from Home Ground. It's got that lovely verse part he plays on there. That's a real nice set of chords on it. And the piano part he came up to go on top of that. Yeah, it's majestic. It's lovely,
Beautiful, yeah, it is. So obviously, when I first saw you at the Marquee, and obviously you supported loads of bands over the years. So, you must have had some really memorable gigs. I mean, the Marquee ones were particularly great. I also remember going to see you at Retford Porterhouse with burnt out tour bus outside, which is a bit frightening when you get there. Do you remember that? But I guess the biggest one obviously was the U2, the all day with U2 at Milton Keynes Bottle. What can you remember about that day?
Well, the longest day. Yeah, it was an interesting time. But one of the best parts was the day before the sound check, because we got to see U2 sound check, with nobody else there, and that was quite good because I've always liked U2, and it was nice to see them. We met them. They came to see us play when we toured with the Rats. They came to see us play in Dublin. There was a place called the TV Club. I think it's changed its name now. And they basically had the circle blacked out so that they could go in there without any fans seeing them. So they got mad, and we went upstairs and met them after, and they were great. They enjoyed us, and the first thing Bono said to us, he's got our record, and we were like, oh, great, And then when it came along on the day, it was a great experience with the Ramones and all that, and Billy Bragg, all those REM all in there as well. But a lot of the press were, because Bono was going on about us a bit, saying this band are going to be huge and all that. Most of the press were asking us, well, what's it like having Bono saying you're going to be great? And that wasn't the sort of question we wanted to answer, So we were a little bit disappointed with that. You asked us about us, not about what else someone else thinks about us, that kind of thing. But it was a great day. It's nowhere near as great as playing in the Marquee. The Marquee's a much better gig. Those big things, people at the back, they're like these little dots that you can't even see. The sound, the wind is blowing the sound around everywhere. I don't know, as a support band, whether the sound on stage is a bit quieter than it is for the main band. Well, it definitely is. But so it wasn't that enjoyable. It was cool, but it wasn't nowhere near in the top of the other gigs. Nowhere near it.
So when you supported a lot of bands, obviously, I'm saying this for the people listening to this, obviously the Broomtown Rats, the Alarm, the REM, Julian Cope, and obviously U2 and the bands there. Did you, you've mentioned now you met U2 and sort of hung out with them a bit. Did you meet other people, Michael Stipe, and other people and so on from other bands that you?
We had a great relationship with REM. They were brilliant. They were big fans. They would come and watch us soundcheck every single gig. They would come out and stand and watch. And when we used to go and do radio interviews on the tour, we'd go on the same bus to the radio station and chat and hang out there. They were a really good bunch. And all the bands, to be fair, all the Alarm guys as well, really supportive. When Pete Townsend, he was another big fan. First thing he said when he came over to us, he sort of plan what you want to say to these guys when you meet them. And the first thing he comes to, I love that track storytelling, And you're about to tell him one of his songs you love, and you think you can't say it now because of what he said to you. But everyone seemed to, support us and liked us, liked what we did. And I can see a lot of us in a lot of those bands as well. There's no doubt about that.
That momentum that you obviously you've got a little bit of profile, lots of publicity from a lot of those quotes that people said, and you obviously were gigging away on the circuits and things.
Yeah.
How was that process of going through from, because the Marquee, I mean, I went there lots of times, but it was a specifically iconic venue, but obviously there was lots of other places you'd have played on that sort of, whether it is the pub circuit in London or across the country. What was that like?
Yeah, it was interesting. It's odd because we obviously, as the Scruff and the Kippers, we had done loads of gigs everywhere, right? Mainly London, but we had travelled about up and down the country. But when we had Faith Brothers' first gig at the Marquee, having never done a gig, and it was our first one was the Marquee, we're thinking, who's going to come? Who's going to turn up? And I can remember doing the sound check and going out, and Bill and I going to get something to eat around the corner and maybe a pint, and thinking, God, I hope there's someone in there when we get back. And when we came back, they were queuing around the block, and they couldn't let any more in. And things. We was blown away, and it just was from that day on. Every gig was just fantastic, So I definitely prefer the small gigs. The Marquee is very hot. When you're on the stage and you've got the lights on you, when you go up to the microphone, I mean, bless you, people standing under one of those hot lights, even just get up and doing backing vocals and knock you out because they're right over the microphone. It is like someone is ironing your hair, and it's like you're soaked after the first song. And then after the second song, then you've got your second wind, and you just go for an hour and a half to 2 hours, But absolutely nothing like it. So all those small gigs, and we were, as I say, well received everywhere. Some of the university gigs were interesting. Those college tours, and they don't really go anymore for bands. It's all mainly tribute bands doing that circuit, as far as I understand. Most of the bands are getting discovered and stuck on a support gig at Man City Stadium or something, and then doing all big shows without going for all that we went through. So I think we were quite lucky that we had all those early days playing all the working men clubs in Acton and places like that. There would be like 5 people in there, and at the end, so and so's got to get up and sing a Frank Sinatra song with you. You don't get paid. So we did it. We had all those sort of gigs during the early days. So we were, we just loved playing. If there were 5 people in there or one person, we would play like 500 in there. And so playing on a big gig in front of all those thousands at Milton Keynes, it was odd because we hadn't really done anything like that. We did a couple of like Southwark Park. We did one there. It was better. It was a bit smaller. We had a bit more. The sound was better in there. It all for me on stage, for it to be enjoyable, it's all about the sound. And if it sounds right on stage, then we're all, us and the crowd, we're just one thing. We don't do it to entertain people. We do it for the experience. And in the later gigs, Bill and I did right at the end when we're still doing the Shepherd's Bush Empire, 2009, that sort of time. We just look at each other and it's like, wow, it's just a feeling that you can't really explain. There's nothing like it. And that's which is really why I don't do it anymore, because I can never get that back. I'd never say never, but that was, I'd never get that back. I can't really see myself doing it. There are a couple of people if they asked me, I might do a number or 2. But what we had was so special and so great. It's like, I don't need any anymore. I've got all that. I've done it, and it was brilliant. Awesome. I don't know if that was a good question.
What was it? No, it's really interesting. What was? Did you have a favourite song that you like to play live?
Faith Brothers, Storyteller was always good. That was always, if we were in a rush to do a sound check for him, that would be a good one to do a sound check to, because we'd start with just Gus doing the drum beat. I'd bring the bass in, Henry would do the piano, Bill the guitar, vocals in, brass section down, and we could play, because we took our own sound man every bit. Huey, who was brilliant. often you'd be looking at me, be down the front dance, everyone else was supposed to be on the desk, you know. But he was a great bloke to have on tour. He came on tour with us, and touring was great fun. Eventide was always brilliant. The faster version, opening with that, I always loved. Daydreamers Philosophy was always a big one live. I enjoyed. From the second album, No Constitution What My Own, was doing that. That one we used to love playing live. Consider Me as well. And then with the later gigs, when it was just the Billy Franks band, we did a song called Just, which is on the
great song.
Genius and Grace. That album.
Genius and Grace.
Yeah. No, you got it great. When I produced that with Bill, we recorded that in the studio. Some of that was recorded in our studio, and we had in the flats in Fulham Court, and the rest of it was done at a place called the Stone Room, which was a studio in Hammersmith that I was house engineering there, and we did a lot of that in there, and that's a great album. But that particular song, love. That's why we played it at Bill's funeral. That one with a couple of lads got up and played and sang that one, because that was it just had everything, that song, for me.
Shall we just say, just for today, the sun is just the sun? Could we agree that to the sea, it's just the way the rivers run? Just you, and these are just the things we do. Another time or just another way. We're just here and we're just now, and we're just passing in and out. Another place or just another day.
But yeah, there was. If we didn't like playing them live, we just wouldn't play them. They're the ones that didn't work, and because we had them so worked out, some of the tempos are really strict. So when you're trying to slow down a little bit, you've got to get the tempo bang on. And usually bands play things much faster live than they do on the record. But certain songs need to be the right tempo. So we know, some songs we'd have to use a click track just to get us in on the right time for the drummer. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So we were that picky about making sure it was right, even though it looked like it was just throwing it together. It wasn't.
So your momentum with the gigging, and then you've got the album comes out, Eventide. And then you get to a point where you need to make the, as you quite rightly say, the difficult second album. So obviously that it felt like that had a little bit more money thrown at it, recording wise, Abbey Road, strings and stuff like that. Talk us through that process.
The second, for Bill and I, the second album was our favourite album by a long way. We used to listen to it a lot, and really surprised that it didn't do better than it did. The first album had a lot more spent on it than in fact, the first single had more spent on it than the second album. The Country of the Blind was 3 weeks in the studio to record 3 songs. We could, like I say, all the demos, we'd knock out demos that were good, 5 or 6 songs easily in a day. We didn't need 3 weeks to make a record, but the problem we had is because everyone was so interested, everyone was so sure that this is going to be good, we needed the right producers. We met lots of producers trying to decide who to make that first record with. So that, having never made a record, only ever really made demos and things on our own little records. We'd never been in a big, massive studio like they were in those days. Still like $1,000 a day people were paying in the mid-'80s for a studio. And so we picked the producers after meeting a few of them, and we thought, well, they know what they're doing, so we'll leave it to them. They'll tell us what to do, sort of thing, And of course, it didn't go anywhere near where we wanted it to go. We were very disappointed with that. Country of the Blind was always going to be the B side. The A side was always Eventide or Sleepwalker. They were the two that were blowing.
Oh, wow!
They were the songs that were blowing record companies away. Even the ones that didn't sign us would come and see us at the marquee and say, what happened to that song Sleepwalker? And for the album, we changed it because we did this big recording of it, which I do have, which is, I don't think it's ever been released, at the same time as the Eventide and Country of the Blind were made. Sleepwalkers was kind of just left there, and we re-recorded it for the album with a different producer, which was much better. But we basically produced that ourselves, if the truth be told. with help from him. Paul Hardiman was great. But so with the second album, the record company didn't really want to. The guy that had signed us had left the label. Someone else was looking after us. The A&R man, different A&R man. They were having hits with Tapao and the Cutting Crew. You know, they weren't the same as us. They were talking about not throwing much money at the second album. We wanted to use an engineer called Greg. What was he saying? Greg. I talk about him all the time, and his second name's gone out of my head. But he did Life's Rich Pageant for REM, which again for me that's their best album by a long way. It's a fantastic sounding record. We already meant to come and do engineer it for us. The rock company at first refused to pay for him to come over and stay and did first class. He said, "Well, I'm not coming to come first." Oh, that nonsense. Anyway, he did, and he came over and we booked Abbey Road out. But by then it was down to £600 a day if you booked for a couple of weeks. So it was cheaper, much cheaper. You know,
that was Greg Edward. I just looked it up.
That's it, Greg Edward. Yeah, I didn't know him in my mind for some reason. Greg Edward, he was a brilliant. He's not around anymore either. He died. Greg, yeah, but I loved him. He was a great bloke, just a brilliant engineer. And that's all we needed. We knew how to produce a record by then. If we didn't already, not on the first one, if we'd have done that first one, or made that first one myself, I think it would have been a very different thing. But that's easy with hindsight. But yeah, so the second album, it was, we were very excited about it. We thought the songs were brilliant. We loved the sound of it. All the tracks were recorded. The backing tracks, which was with Gus playing drums, me on bass, and Bill on guitar, were all done live. So we'd set up in the studio as a 3-piece band in Abbey Road, Studio 2, which was a dream because it's where the Beatles made all their greatest, and we were joyous to be in there. And like the song "The Saint of Contradiction," which again, brilliant record, brilliant song.
Contradictory clash, a divine spark will be my sound, and you will hear me coming. Empty chamber for firing squad, loads excuses, but then genius God before inhumanity, censor and pistol swinging, we fall, the big shot ringing. Let them come, let them come, until we are free of the atom that shines the sun. Or dancing jackals, dancing full flight, the century spinning, a moment right. I accept my choice, chance we want to swell, to love in spite of creation.
That was the first take of the day. That one take, bang, that's it. Then we come and put the other brass and stuff on afterwards, and the timpanis and all the other little bits that are on there, and the strings we added later. But the basic tracks were all done live really quickly. The first album was 3 months making it. That album was 2 weeks recorded. And we took it to LA to mix it and do some percussive overdubs there. The great Bobby Hallwood played with everybody from Fleetwood Mac to Bill Withers and everyone in between. She did all the percussion in one day, which was a brilliant day. She was so fantastic. You just listen to all those shakers and tambourines going on there. It's unbelievable. It really is. It's so much more than what anyone can imagine. So that second album was brilliant fun to make, really quick, mixed quickly, knowing it about, mixed at the same studio as Life's Rich Pageant, REM. If you listen to them, there are similarities, in the sound, being the same engineer. Yeah, so it was odd because the record company didn't get behind it like they should have done.
The single, that's just the way that it is. I'm amazed this didn't get higher chart place, because it's what I think on my humble opinion, I think it's one of the better songs.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great single. Yeah, great song.
in sweet solitude, I listen to myself singing. It's a magical mystery. That's just the way that it is with me. That's just the way that it could, would, should be. That's just the way that it is with me.
Why do you think it didn't quite land?
It's interesting. I mean, the BBC, but it's all about airplay in those days. You cannot get on the radio, and also videos. We never know from it. Our first videos, disastrous. So that Country Blind video, we had all ideas about how we wanted it, and then you say no, we didn't know how to do it. So this guy knows what they're doing. Get them in, and it ended up we had to do all these images on there that weren't allowed to be shown on children's TV shows, and they were the ones that people were selling records on. So we get on programs like going live in those Saturday Superstore or whatever it was. If you're the only band on there, as opposed to the 10 that are on Top of the Pops, if you're the only band on, you're going to sell a few records, and that's why everyone went on there. That's why they go on. It's just to sell records, So you're looking for those slots. We did a couple of those, but with the second album, the radio plays were down, and we upset the BBC, or they were upset by our political stance and anything like that. They just pulled the record here and there. I can remember Steve Wright we were due to be played on his program, and then he would have a slot 3 months later, like should have been a hit, and play our records then, which is no good. It's too late. And I think you're only flavour of the month for a while. And that first year, everyone was saying how great this band is and how great, the big they're going to be. Because we weren't. By the second album, it's like people weren't that interested. But that song, I think it was that one, I consider me one of them. They used to do the round table on the BBC on a Friday night, which is a record review.
Yeah.
And 20 years later, I was working in Germany. A guy called Steve Elson was there. He was in a few bands, and he made a few records, had a few big hits. And he was saying how he was on that show, and Simon Mayer said to him, if you heard that song, would you turn it off or turn it off? He said, no, I don't turn it up. He said, I'll turn it up and record it. So everyone was saying it, a great record. Sorry, that sounded really messy. But it was well received in the industry, but not really by the press, who had turned against us by then, and we couldn't do anything right as far as they were concerned. So I can't put it out on that. If you don't get the airplay, I'll get it on TV. You're not going to sell them. Simple as that, really.
And did that contribute to then the band perhaps, maybe splitting and
kind of, because when we split up at the end, it was sort of 88. We did a couple of nights at the Marquee. I think there were 2 gigs early 88, March maybe, something like that. And we decided, they were so good, and we decided after that we're going to knock it on the head. They were the best moments, those gigs, and the record company were not that interested. There was talk other record companies might be interested in us. So if we got away from that deal, we might get in with somebody else. But I think when we were kind of relieved to get out of it, because it was a bit of a fight. We'd been through a couple of different managers as well, trying to get it to go how we wanted it to go. And so it just started. We decided to quit before it became the great rock and roll dwindle, is what we used to say. You know what I mean? It was give up while you still can pull a good crowd at the Marquee, which is all we really wanted. Do you know what I mean? And it would have been nice if it lasted a bit longer at that level, but we thought, no, let's stop because we can see it petering out. We didn't want it to.
No, interesting. So obviously after the Faith Brothers, Billy had a good solo career. With a loyal fan base. Obviously tragic death. But tell us what have you continued to be involved in music in some way?
Yeah, well, I was involved in most of Bill's solo stuff as well. Not all of it. We started recording Mass with a couple of other guys, but I ended coming in and mixing that and doing some extra recording on it and finished that album off. Did Genius and Grace with him completely from start to finish. Sex, Laughter and Meditation he did on his own. And then we did Total Death Boutique together. That took quite a while to do, but we did that one from start to finish together. And then the last one he did on his own as well. And in those other periods, I was working with other artists. I had a few bands. There was a band called Ixie, which was a great little 4-piece. Didn't get signed. We put our own record out. Should have been signed, definitely. The drummer in that was Nigel, who went on to play with Bill and I later on. He played on Total Death Boutique and loads of gigs with us as a 3-piece with Nigel. He's no longer with us either. Brilliant drummer. That band was quite good. There was another. There were loads of bands. I won't name them all. But then I started working as an engineer from the studio we'd built in Fulham Court. I'd basically spent quite a lot of time down there just learning my craft, if you like, how to run it all. And I'd get local bands in, charge them for the price for a reel of tape, and make demos with them and stuff like that. And that started to get good. And some of them was start moving around a bit, and other studios, oh, where did you record this? Oh, I did it with Lee in the basement. And they didn't want to meet me, so I ended up going to work at these studios and started engineering at other studios. And then got into, I was approached to do some live engineering. We do some front of house, so yeah, I could do that. And then I ended up doing stuff all over Europe, which was quite cool. When the Berlin Wall came down in '89, suddenly all the bands from the 60s and 70s that weren't allowed to go and play in Eastern Europe were allowed to go there. But all the bands went out there, which was everyone you can name from the 60s, apart from the Beatles and the Stones and the Who. Everyone else was there. Loads of bands from the 70s. But none of the crew in Eastern Europe could speak English. So the bands were struggling to communicate with them. So they wanted English engineers. So the promoter came over and I met him. And I said, yeah, I'll come and see what it's like. And I loved it. I ended up doing that for many years, going off to weekends, doing festivals in Germany. Some are like, 56,000 people. Some are huge. Again, some just little beer killers in Berlin and things like that, So I enjoyed all that as an engineer. So I was working as an engineer in the studios and live. And recording lots of other artists. And there was a company called Drum Tech, which was the biggest music school in Europe, and Vocal Tech. They all merged, Vocal Tech, Drum Tech, and they eventually were sold to the BIM, which was the British and Irish music, which was started by the guy from Iron Maiden, Bruce Dickinson. I taught for them for about 7 years, teaching and lecturing about studio production techniques. But that only took about 60 days of my year. Still quite a few hundred students over those years. Made lots of good friends there, lots of great singers, drummers, guitarists. Got helped with some of those, getting placements in bands and things like that, and given good experience of what it's like in a studio, what to expect as they move through their career. That was most enjoyable. So that was a great period. So yeah, I just continued in doing everything really: live engineering, playing live, studio engineering, and teaching.
Well, I mean, thank you so much for your time. It's been, I'm conscious that we're probably over what we said, but we're really pleased. Noel and I used to come and see, when you were playing with Billy in, like the Troubadour and the Greyhound and regularly.
Some of those Troubadour gigs, Bill and I, they were some of our best gigs.
They were good. They were really good.
We had a sort of thing at the top 5 gigs we'd done in our lifetime. 3 of them at least would be with me, him, and Nigel, and like Troubadour and places like that. They were the best gigs we'd ever done, definitely. And other drummers played with us as well were excellent. But yeah, the Marquee will always be there for me as like the top ones. The Marquee, the Troubadour, those type of clubs that's what we love. And so and every gig we did, it was 100% always. Every record we made, it was 100%, nothing half baked. And I've always been that way. Any record I make, any production I was involved in, any band I was with, it had to be 100% my name attached to it. And if it's going to be half baked, I'm not doing that. Everything's got to be the best it can be, and the most fun it can be as well. It doesn't have to be hard work. It's very enjoyable.
Our final question, Lee, is one we ask everybody. So it's nice, and then we'll get building up a nice little library of questions. But it's what was your, if you look back now, what was your best or favourite memory of the time with the Faith Brothers?
It's hard. I'd need time to think about it. I think making the second album, that time in Abbey Road, when we just get there in the morning and the 3 of us just go and start recording these tracks and go and listening back to them, that was such a brilliant experience. Other than that, it would just be, I guess, Hammersmith Odeon, when we supported the Alarm at Hammersmith Odeon. That would be important. That was the first time we ever had one of those group hugs before we went on stage, ever. Because Bill and I, as kids, used to go and watch everyone play there. Every night of the week. We lived 5 miles from there, if less, even less. And we'd bunk in over the roof and watch bands in orchestra pit and stuff like everybody. So to actually get to play there, that we thought then, that's it. That was like a peak. So that's probably a key moment, would be playing there any night at the Marquee, and then in the studio making the second album. Really, it was so much. We were so free just to do what we wanted to do, and we had done all those gigs with such a tight unit. It was a joy to play. We all knew exactly what everyone else was going to do. With a lot of the drums I've worked with, because when you get that coordination between the drum and bass, that's holding it all there. You can hear the link. They know exactly what each other's doing, and That's what makes that soul. It gives it that feel. Anything else that goes on top of that, all the power is on there. Then you've got that foundation. And so when you're playing with people like that, there's nothing like it. I suppose that's it.
That is brilliant. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It's really good to talk to you. You know, there's loads of areas in there with the studio and things that we could have touched on, but so you know, if everyone want to go down that road another time, I'm more than happy to have another chat.
Always happy to do a part 2.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good weekend. Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Well, there you go, Noel. That was that was brilliant, wasn't it?
Really interesting. Really interesting. I mean, I know the band, and I like the band, as you know, very much. But
yeah,
I learned stuff there I didn't know. Just really interesting to talk to you. How enthusiastic he is about the band.
He looks back with us with such a fondness of the time. There was no regret or anything. It was just like a fabulous time for them, and they had it. Plus, also, I took that he said about Country of the Blind was going to be a B-side. Well, that's an almost identical story to what Neil Dyer was talking about in Screen 3 around New Blood and the European Journey. So what, you know, and Shaking Stevens gave him a PA.
I mean, stuff like that I didn't realise at all.
Random. I loved his phrase, "the great rock and roll dwindle."
That's hilarious. And I didn't realise that Steve Howlett was Gus Jennings. So
oh right, yes, no, me neither.
No, so there you go.
That was good. So great,
fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Hope everybody enjoyed that, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Uncharted 80s podcast.